First things first, I'm going to apologise for the fact that this is just low grade B-movie classification. I don't have all the Fandangle special stuff that YouTubers have, so bear with me. In lockdown, why not talk about palmistry? So I do this in the red room. So the first hour you'll come to me and you have tarot readings and rune readings, but the last half an hour I like to do palmistry. I've always loved palmistry. I haven't always been good at it. So when I was about 17, 18, 19, I studied a lot of palmistry. I read all the books. And to be honest, I really wasn't, I suppose it wasn't speaking to me. I'm very much a chaotic witch, which means that I study, I'm very respectful to traditional knowledge, and then I adapt it. And I adapt it to my knowledge. I adapt it to the new space and energy that we live in, because 2,000 years ago, palmistry doesn't fit with 2,000 years later palmistry. Life's very, very different. About 2 years ago, I was searching YouTube because I was desperate, absolute desperate to connect with a palmist out there who, I suppose, spoke my language. And I happened to come across this amazing woman, and I think she was in Croatia, but it was somewhere in Europe, and she'd been reading palmistry for 35 years from recollection. And what she presented on that YouTube clip was a timeline, and that was it. The minute I saw that timeline, everything like figured it out for me. It was like a light bulb moment. So one of the things I really love about palms is they talk. Now, if anyone's ever read my book Sword, you will know that I have non-ancient witches and I have ancient witches. Now, ancient witches, their magic comes from their palms, because I think palms are actually extremely powerful spaces. We touch people, we do Reiki from our palms, energy comes off our palms. I believe conversation happens in our palms, and also the plan and soul purpose. I'm not a fatalist. I believe that we can continuously change the energy as far as if we know our patterns and if we know what's going on in our life. So, I do feel like energy gets set off previously. However, we may miss it. We may not be listening to our intuition, and those things that are our soul purpose, we may absolutely completely miss. Palmistry for me is an amazing way to figure out what we came for, the reasons we came for it, and how we're going with that. So in some respects, there's a certain element of fatal, like a fatalist aspect. But then on the flip side, it really is about, are we listening? Is our intuition on? Are we missing parts? So the first thing I do when someone sits down in front of me is I ask them if they're left-handed or they're right-handed. Now, if you are right-handed, right, that is the hand that you sign with. So some people actually use both their hands, which can be really difficult. Story, back in the day when the nuns used to smash you over the hand because you weren't writing with your right hand and you were a left-hander, that can cause a whole big problem as far as reading your palms. So thanks, nuns. Good luck to anyone who's had that happen, because it blurs all the lines really terribly, because, suddenly this energy's been played with and you've got to try and figure out what the hell's going on. So I'm right-handed. That's my doing hand. The theory on that with the right hand is that this is how I'm going. I was born, I'd forgotten my soul plan, my soul purpose, and I basically have to navigate my entire life from my gut. And most of us aren't taught to do that ever, and some of us are taught to do that, and then we start to listen to it as we get older. The left hand for me has the plan. So I don't get into any religious arguments, and I certainly don't pretend to know anything about what actually is going on in the cosmos. I always say to everyone, when we were swinging on a star, we decided we'd like to be reincarnated. I am a very strong believer in reincarnation. And we decided we're going to go, I'd like to be human. And when I become a human, I would like to learn these things. It's just a theory. I'm not saying it's actual. It's just what palmistry is about, and I explain that to all my clients. So the left hand has the plan for me. It should be fixed. It shouldn't change. The line should change. I have heard that the right hand for me could change, you know, as I navigate and as I start to realize I need to get back to here. Now, there's reasons that I think I know most palmers will probably just go for the hand you do stuff with, your writing sign hand. I, as a writer, will always read your palms together. For me, it's the whole. It's about reconnecting to the soul purpose and seeing how we're going with it. Now, you may look at your hand and go, wow, there's a whole lot of issues there. Geez, I've caused myself an awful lot of grief. I've come down here to really, really, really suffer. Now, in some ways, palmistry, when you see that, is extremely healing, because you can say, well, that shitty childhood I had was actually planned. So then I have a look at the other hand and I see how you dealt with that childhood. You either got stuck in it, or you learnt from it, you healed from it, and you moved through. Very often I see that people that have moved through trauma quite often do it as a living. So if you've had a terrible, violent childhood, you could become a counsellor. You could move into that space where you become a super healer. If you ever do want to know if you are a super healer, that area is sitting here underneath the little finger. If you have more than 4 lines on that mount, it means you're a super healer. You may have super healer qualities on your soul purpose, but you may not tag in on this side because you never got to a space where you became a healer. There's a bit of a fallacy out there that you need to be super healed before you can become a super healer. I call bullshit on that. I call bullshit because I wouldn't be doing what I do because I'm not super healed. And what we really need to be is just in front of the game always. Do you know that we get to move and gravitate towards that? You know, if you know a little bit about yoga, you can start teaching someone who doesn't know anything about yoga. Like, do you have to know everything? Do you have to be a master before you can start teaching? I mean, obviously you need to always care about the person and know enough to keep them safe, and also be open-minded enough to let them know that you're only in that space. I mean, don't let ego and pride kick in. So there's a lot about palmistry that I don't know, but what I do know, I love. So I keep it to that. So the first things first, I figure out which side is your soul purpose and which side is your doing. And then I read it together. Now, the first thing people do is show me their hands, right? They show me their palms. Now, some people do this. But the way that you present your hands tells me an awful lot about your inner self. If people do this, you're dealing with someone who potentially is very shy. It's also the charity hand. This person is probably a giver and they're coming here to give. But, it just depends how they're going with that, because if someone has charity hands, they may be overly caring. They may be overly sharing if they haven't been taught boundaries. Now, the person who knows boundaries is this person. Right? That person that does that is black and white. See this bit in the middle? Doesn't exist, right? Black or white, don't bullshit me. I don't want to know about it. Also, and then you get another person who's like this. So watch the way people present their hands to you. In public, be really aware of social conversation with palms. A very, very clever person, someone who's a little bit manipulative, can go, trust me, look at my wrists, look at these, I'm opening up to you, there's no lies here. You can pretty much pull bullshit on that by checking out their thumb. Now, I actually don't have the thumb. Some people do have this most beautiful thumb that creeps back like that. If someone has a thumb that creeps back, super honest human being. They don't naturally gravitate towards even telling little white lies. So you can tell that Also, well, let's move straight into thumbs, because I do love a thumb. A thumb is your personality. So you're looking at this joint here and you're looking at this joint here. Now you can see with my joint, I've got an extremely large curvature here. I have, well, as I've got older, I used to be able to actually flip this behind my wrist. This here tells me how flexible you are. Now, if someone is very unflexible in that space, you're dealing with a dogmatic personality. You're dealing with someone who's very fixed. You're dealing with someone who knows and they don't care to be open-minded. And even if their thumb then is really super strong, then you're dealing with someone you're never going to actually ever have an abstract conversation with. Now, some people might be super attracted to that stubbornness and that dogmatic approach. Me, however, I sit very much on the opposing side to that. I have a very large flick here. This is called the travel flick. So with this travel flick, it means that I must experience big cultures, big changes, big flights. I need to see the world. It's really important for my health and well-being. And because I've got this flexibility here, it means that I'm really quite open-minded and able to look at other people's opinions. It's got me in trouble because quite often I will sit back for a long time before I decide to make a decision on someone's personality, even though maybe the red flags were there way before. So, and also the distance between here and here tells people how, or tells me how social people are. Some people sit here, some people are here, some people are wide open. Now, just because you have a wide expanse here does not mean that you are always an extrovert. But it does mean on a health component, you do need to have people in your life. I'm an introvert extrovert, so I love a lot of people and I like to know a lot of people and I like to know people with great minds. However, I love to hermit. So don't think just because you've got this, but if you are someone like this, you're probably quite happy with a couple of friends, a dinner out. You don't need to go to big social events. It's not part of your equation. Now, what you need to be doing all the time when reading palms together is seeing the deviation, right? So if you've got quite flexible thumbs, but suddenly this joint is starting to get seized up, you're really not probably as open-minded as what you should be. You're starting to close up, and that could be because of life. Now, the next thing I look at is the little finger. Now, there's always been this kind of like storytelling that if you had a crooked finger, you were a crook, like, you know. And interesting enough, I've dated a couple of guys with crooked fingers, and it cost me financially, let me tell you. So just be, I'm not saying everyone, because there is actually a birth defect that does crook your finger. So I'm not saying everybody that has a crooked finger is a crooked person. You want to look at the whole hand with that. Now, as you would notice, I spent a lot of time with a lot of gap between here and here. Now, I got told when I was younger I had blue blood in me. And not a romantic story, let me tell you. The theory is that downstairs was raped by upstairs. So I'm not quite sure if that story is true, but it's what my mum told me. Anyway, so I always thought when I was drinking my cups of tea that I had a bit of blue blood in me. But actually looking at palmistry, the distance between here and here is more about the expansion of mind, also the independence of a person, because what's sitting here is the wedding finger and the relationship finger. And you know, some people I know will actually attach their little finger to this finger, and it kind of gives me an indication this person has come to spend their life with another person. It's very important to them that they have someone to share their life with. What I caution here is if you are coming down here, be really careful about the person you marry, because you're going to probably stay in that relationship way longer than most people will because of your value system, which is to stay married. Some people have crossed over and, you know, which is kind of going, I'm actually handballing all responsibility to someone else. I'm just here to be a subservient person. I'm here to be told what to do. That in itself is a really amazing concept, that you would choose that. You know, to me, who's got a finger out here, You know, to me, that's just craziness, you know, but to someone else, it's really important that they have an extremely powerful marriage and a very, very strong family component. But I always say, be careful, because if you are someone who isn't an alpha, you're probably going to be attracted to an alpha person, or male or female. You've got to be really cautious about picking the right person who's going to look after your heart and your soul. I'm not saying that anyone like me who's out there quite often, well, I'm always out there. Actually, interesting enough, if I'm ever uncomfortable, I will cross my little finger underneath and I'll hide it. You'll always know when I'm uncomfortable, because I will get rid of my independence like that, and I'll just put it in there and I keep it safe. It's a really interesting little key to me. But so the distance, most people sit around here, some people are out here. If you start to see changes, so you've got someone who's quiet, come down here to be married, and then they're out here, chances are they've gone and had about 3 marriages that haven't been successful, and they're starting to get really cagey. So my question is, are you happy here, or do you want to go back to here with some boundaries and look at your patterns? Are you picking the wrong man or woman? Like, you know, so you need to start to always listen to this inner self. Now, because I only have 30 minutes to do palmistry in the red room, I keep it to the basics. My very, 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 very favourite bit is the timelines. To me, timelines are everything, because I can give you when most things are going to happen, and it's really uncanny how often it does happen. And some people have like totally missed a certain space that they were meant to change or leave a relationship, but then they've caught up later. So don't ever fear if you've got lines that are really way off. You may reconnect later on. So it's never an ending story. You're always, you know, because I'm such a believer in merging, it's always fluid. If you're aware and you quite like that. So I've got an island that's on my lifeline. Islands are indications of extremely busy times, times that are out of your hands. On this hand, it's indicating to me that I'm going into it much earlier than I was meant to. So I'm increasing the speed to get to this island, which is, you know, the irony of that, because the island is a shitty time generally. So I'm moving as fast as I can to get to the shitty time. So, you know, I tried to slow it down by being healthier. The last 3 years, everything has been about my health and well-being. Everything. So I still haven't slowed it down. In fact, I think I'm increasing it. So maybe the universe knows that I'm actually ready for it. So, you know, whatever. I mean, islands aren't, you know, it's almost 9 years, this island. It's a long time. So it's not going to be all bad, is it? But what it is an indication to be wary. We've got something coming. You really need to buckle down. Everything will come down to the way you perceive it and how you deal with it. So, and I know that it's coming, and I'm very much acceptance of it now, that, you know, it's part of my life plan, that this 9 years of my life is meant to be quite chaotic. So acceptance to that. So what I'm going to teach you is the timeline. And, you know, because I'm so advanced in my graphic capabilities, this is a hand I did earlier. So what I want you to do, right, so here's my hand. Now the first thing we're going to do is simply put a line through here down, and it's pretty simple. This is not hard stuff. So straight down from that crack of the finger there down to there, and you're going to put a line here. Now that hits on our heart line. We come to the next spot, we do exactly the same. I've put a dot there instead. And then we do the same at the little finger. Now, those timelines are, and I'm going to move this a bit closer. That is 21. That is 42. That is 62. Pretty simple. Easy peasy Japanesey. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to this mount here, which is your Venus mount. Now remember with the mounts, if you have really fleshy mounts, you have an extreme amount of abundance in that area. So Venus, she's the sexy goddess, you know, she's all about luxury and love and passion. So if you're really, really fat in this area, you must be passionate. You've got to be. So if you start to numb out here, if you start to flatten out, you're not living to your highest capabilities. So remember, be passionate. Now I've just realized how red I'm getting. Must be heading up outside, which is lovely. So you're going to go to the fleshy mount here, to the peak. So if you look at it like a mountain, find the top bit. That's where the summit is. That's the spot. You're going to put a little dot there. Then what you're going to do, and actually it'll make it easier if I do it for you and show you. So where the little finger ends and joins with your hand, that's the first spot. So you go from the fleshy bit to the top there, and you're going to draw a line across your lifeline. And that's where I've done it here. It's not the greatest of lifeline lines, but let me tell you. So that's where you're going to do that. That's your first spot. Then to make life easier, you're going to come down to here where your hand joins your wrist, and you're going to put a little line there. You're going to go back to the fleshy bit, to your spot, and you're going to join the two lines together, and you're going to put a line across your lifeline. Then you're going to measure between here and here, and you're going to find your middle spot. So not all people on both hands are equal. Some people have 8 centimeters and I go to 4, or some people have 7.3 and I've got to find the middle. It's not always identical. So then you're going to find your middle spot. You're going to go to your little spot, and you're going to go to the middle, and you're going to put a line across there. Now we have 3 spots. 1, 2, 3. Come on in. That one right there is your 35. That one there is 49. And our favorite number, 69, right? Don't fear if you stop here. Don't think, oh shit balls, I'm going to die. It's not as simple as that. The line health has, although I've never seen it, if your line stop there, there and there, I've never seen that. Never. So some lines go long, and then this could be shorter, the headline, and then this one could wrap around here. Some people are short here. It's more an indication of energy spaces. So if you were to stop at 35 and that was it, I'm not necessarily going to think you're going to die at 35. I'm going to have a look at other indications going on there, but it certainly could. If someone stops and then there's a gap and then there's more line, it's kind of like the void, and it's amazing how many people come to me in that void, and they're having breakdowns. They're so unsure where they're meant to be, but then when I explain to them they're in a void, which basically means hold your ground. You're in a space where you're not meant to have any markers. You're meant to actually wing it. And because I didn't know that was coming, when they hit it, they think it's kind of like removing the mat from underneath your feet. You're actually just flying into the air and about to smash down. And it's better that you knew about that and you're ready for it. So a lot of people come to me in that space. And then I go, it's okay, because when you get to 49, it's back on, and they can start to breathe then. And then I look at other indications of health and how deep the lines are. These are quite health lines down here, the little rings across there. So now you've got these timelines, and I can suddenly, and then I'll look at lines, I'll look at chains on the lines. Lines that go backwards indicate negative, lines that go forwards, positives. It's not always as simple as that. I've got a very, very long backwards line at the age that I lost my mum, and it's very long. The grief line is very long backwards. But then when I go up to my headline, and I'll show you here actually, it might be easier. So I've got, actually I can't even do it. It's on this side. It's on this side. But there's a huge line that goes backwards. So that's where I lost my mum. Now, as I come down here to my headline, which is this middle line here, you can start to see something quite interesting, right? So all the books are going to explain to you about the shape of a headline. It's going to say, you know, if it's curved, you're more abstract, and if it's more straight, you're more business-like. I find that really boring. What I actually like is the moments that they change. So the minute if you're heading like this and then suddenly you go like that, something drastic happened in your life to change you, and it made you grow up, or it made you go, you know, actually, I have no idea what I'm doing and I need to go and explore somewhere else. So the writer in me is more about the changes. So you can see here, you know, I was traveling along, minding my own business, la, 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 mum died. Boom, there's I've got a big grief line that goes there. Suddenly I've got this huge change. So I'm going to just to show you. Traveling along. Now, if mum hadn't died, I'd still be traveling along that line. And I would have ended up over there, which is very, very different, because what happened was this. And you can see quite clearly something drastic happened at that time in my life that changed the course. I was never going to do Red Room. Being a psychic wasn't part of my equation. I was going to be a writer and a traveller. And, actually, I was going to do anything but be a psychic. So you can see very quickly that I turned and started heading down to the lunar mount. So this is the abstract page, mount. This is where things are supernatural. This is where things you start to be really open-minded about it and creativity comes in. So on the plan for me, Mum died exactly the time she was meant to die, which is a really amazing place for healing and acceptance. Because then it shoots off down here and my life changed drastically and I had to grow up. I mean, I was a sooky little bitch through there. I really was. Oh, woe is me. I'm such a victim, right? So I was such if I could go back and slap that person, I would. This happened. Boom, down I went, and I started to be a grown-up. So I always call it a grown-up. Also, I want you to know there's quite a little bit of distance, isn't there, from here to 21. So down here, the 21 still joins there. So you got 21 through to 35. So you can start to see there's actually quite from 0 here traveling along down to 35, an awful lot happens in your life. And then you have a look at 69 and you think, oh yeah, not too bad. It goes around the corner a little bit. Lots of people do this, and I've got one right there. So that's, depending on where that little crossroad is, depends on a lot of things. So later on, you can almost assume there on your lifeline with the split that you're going into some sort of semi-retirement, or you're changing life. Life's going to be more about living and less about making money and all the rest of it. The health line, if you've got lines that go through it, can indicate bad health, things like that. Islands, of course, long times. Lines that go backwards, bad health. Lines that go forwards, better health, different decisions. Lines that go from, say, your headline to your heart line. I'll just make one up there. Depending on how my gut feels about that, because if you're on your heart line, you could look back and see that as a negative. But if you do it from a headline to the forwards, it can be a positive. So go with your gut with that, to how you want to feel, if it's a positive or negative, and most things are positive and negatives. So, but it does indicate some big changes. So say you decide that you're going to leave your job here, especially if it comes through with your fate line, which mine does there, your work fate line, mine cracks into there. So just say I decided to change course, which I did, and opened up Red Room. Now, I can see that going forwards and potentially boosting my heart later on, say in another 5 years. So nothing is in the spot. Don't read palms like this. You can say, yes, Joe, at 42, you're going to start really pushing Red Room and it's going to become part of your life. But it's really going to open your heart chakra up in about 3 years' time because of all the amazing people that you've met and the journey it's taken you. So you do need to listen to your own gut when you're reading other people's palms. So, you probably noticed that I'm not really sticking to what the books have to say. I don't care for that. Like, you can go and read a book on palmistry. I want you to see how I do it. So I'm nearly at 30 minutes, and I like to cut off because right now it's terrible trying to upload anything on the internet. I think every person is on the internet while they're self-isolating and at home. So hopefully go and have a little play with your palms. If you're stuck indoors with your family, you can check out their things, their hands and their lines, and have a bit of fun and have a practice with doing the timelines. Here is relationships. In here is children. And they can change, and read your hands together and see how you're going with that. You know, if you do have, chains, it can mean exactly that. You've got chains. It's kind of a chained space. Some people, it's amazing how they deal with it. Some people will not, just say they have a death here or a breakup here, they'll put a line through there, which means they don't really deal with stuff. I would prefer to see lines going backwards or forwards, because that to me looks proactive. You can grieve. Grieving is a proactive emotion. You are grieving, and you should grieve because you're giving respect to that person who's passed over. You're giving respect to your body. You're getting it out of your body, which is always what I took me years to grieve my mother. Years and years. It was horrific. It was not something I ever want to go through again. Get it out. Grief will sit on your chest. I kind of feel the irony that coronavirus attacks your lungs. And it attacks your throat first. So as a metaphysical response to indicating what that might be about, apparently it sits in your throat for 2 to 3 days before it goes to your lungs. We need to speak from from our throat chakra. We need to speak with kindness and compassion. Of course, do everything you need to do, which is hack at it, go at it, be healthy. But maybe we need to start speaking our truth, because once things hit our chest, it goes into anxiety. The world is full of anxiety right now. So full of anxiety and grief, and it is attacking the lungs. So I'm hoping in some sort of positive hope thing that I like to do, that the world will heal on a massive capacity in the lung heart chakra, that we will reach out. I'm really paranoid a little bit that everyone will end up dog on dog mentality, where we just not enough, and I'm going to start taking, and I would hate for that. I really hope that we go, you know what, I've got way too much food here for one person, so I'm going to give that to you. I really hope that's the way that we go from the heart chakra, because it is affecting our grief. It's affecting our chest, our ability to breathe. As my mum used to say, everyone dies of shortness of breath. And she was like that. She was really dark, mum. And also I wanted to say, I've been walking every day and doing some hill walks, and I have to admit, the last week, the influx of animals that I'm seeing is increased so much. Birds, butterflies, an echidna this morning, lots of wallabies are out. I don't know, it's bizarre, because last week I saw nothing, and this week I'm seeing lots and lots of animals. I love animal totem work, but I also just feel like maybe the earth is healing a little bit. We're all sitting at home and self-caring, hopefully, and maybe the animals are starting to feel a little bit safer about their environment now, because animals are highly intuitive. So anyway, any questions, let me know. I'm sure I've missed a whole lot of info, but I didn't want to do the boring old, this is your headline, this is your lifeline, Google it. But I do want you to know that it's almost like a roadmap. This can link to here, and this can link to there, and that goes off into that space, and that goes off into that space. Read your palms together. That is the most important thing. Read them together. See what the whole looks like. Holistic whole. It's really important that we look at it. I mean, I'm quite happy. I'm still super independent, and sometimes I my mind is always looking for expansion, and and it's a little hard for me to ever settle down with anyone, because you know, I need to have this pulsing information coming at me all the time, but now I have acceptance for it. I'm like, yeah, I get that. I understand that. So hopefully when you start to learn your palms, same as if you're super stubborn and, you know, you want to get married, you know, accept that. You know, I really want to be with someone, and that's okay. And also if you're stubborn, use it for positive, you know. If you know, people, and it also gives us indication personality was kind of set before you got down here. I mean, I've studied science and psychology and all the rest of it. I do believe environment, as well as, you know, what we're born with, you know, does work. But from a palmist point of view, there is an idea. And also from a big spectrum, it kind of agrees with my idea that life is intelligence. There's a massive intelligence going on. And I may find my information from palmistry. Another person might find their information from science. Another person may find their information from religion, or even just from walking in nature, right? I don't feel anyone is right or wrong, but everyone sees their story in something, so in some discipline. And I think when we start to all love the fact that everyone, like the other day I watched a video on intergalactic conspiracy theories, and even my mind struggled with it. But she strangely, like, and in her philosophy, in her story, she does remote viewing to universal powers that she talks to in space, and they relayed some information to her, and she was relaying it to her fan base. Now, my brain was going, I don't like it, right? So, but I listened, and then I took from it what I found interesting. And I realised really it was very similar to the tarot reading I did the other day. So that made me start to think about, well, her story is that she talks to aliens. I talk to the tarot card, right? And both are equally crazy if you're not that way inclined, right? You can say, well, it's all divination, mysticism. What do all people always say? Snake juice, or whatever it is. You know, our super crazies, you know, that we're all out there. However, you know, similar stories are across the board. I mean, how many predictions have been made by fiction writers? I mean, you gotta love it. Like, and it's got nothing probably to do with predictions or divination, and everything to do with that people know patterns. And most people can see patterns, like Black Mirror. That I won't watch it because to me it's not a fiction story. It's probably predicting the future. So it frightens me, and I don't watch Black Mirror anymore because of it. So anyway, I'll stop it there. Comment down below. Feel free to share, and hopefully you lasted the extra 7.5 minutes that I kept talking. Lots of love. Stay safe. Look after your health, and let's be a collective. Let's be a collective.